London. The autumn air feels sharp and tense as the cameras click to life outside the Community Security Trust headquarters. Inside, Britain's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, walks slowly toward the lectern. His expression is measured, his tone deliberate. What brings him here is not politics, but pain, a nation grappling with the aftermath of a deadly attack on a synagogue in northern England, an act of hate that has shaken Britain to its core. For Starmer, this is not just another press appearance, it is a moment of reckoning, an attempt to reassure a community that has felt fear for far too long. The Jewish community of Britain, though small in number, has been a cornerstone of national life for centuries. Yet in recent years, anti-Semitic incidents have risen sharply. For many, safety has become a daily concern, not a given. Standing in front of the CST's emblem, a symbol of protection and resilience, the Prime Minister begins to speak. His words are firm but empathetic. Underlying all of this, he says, is the issue of countering extremism. There are the individual acts, but there's also the countering of extremism and the social cohesion that's needed. We want to work with you on that, to step up the work the government is doing and make sure that every member of our Jewish community in this country feels safe and feels that this is where they belong. He pauses for a moment, scanning the faces before him, security officers, rabbis, volunteers and community leaders. Then, in a quieter but heavier tone, he adds, "This is the country they are part of, and it's our job to make sure that translates into a deep sense of security." It's a simple sentence, but one that carries immense weight. Britain's Jewish community has faced centuries of discrimination, yet it has always persevered, contributing to business, politics, medicine and the arts. But in the wake of recent violence, questions about belonging have resurfaced. Starmer's words then are meant to be more than comfort. They are a declaration of duty. For Starmer, the issue of extremism has long been part of his political identity. A former prosecutor before entering politics, he knows that behind every attack lies a network of ideas, radicalisation, misinformation, ideological grievance. That must be countered before violence takes root. His government, he says, will make the fight against extremism one of its central missions. Beside him stands Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, the first Muslim woman to hold the post. Her presence at this event is more than symbolic. It's a statement in itself. In a time of polarisation, the sight of a Muslim Home Secretary and a Jewish security organisation sharing the same stage sends a message of unity that words alone cannot. When Mahmood begins to speak, her tone carries both empathy and urgency. "It is an indictment against all of us in our country," she says, "that Jewish life can only be maintained behind walls, behind thick glass, behind locks, and that children must be taught what confinement is. That is an indictment of all of us." Her words hang heavy in the room. For Jewish parents who have grown used to seeing security guards outside their children's schools, it's a painful truth. Across Britain, synagogues are protected by barriers, schools conduct lockdown drills, and community centres rely on funding for surveillance and guards. Mahmood's admission cuts through the noise of political language. It's not about blame, it's about recognition. Recognition that in a liberal democracy, fear should never be normalised. Recognition that children should not associate worship with walls. She goes on to announce practical measures. "We will take practical steps on police presence outside synagogues and other places of interest to the Jewish community," she says. "We announced additional funding today, but I know there is a bigger issue here that we all need to think about and try to answer together." As the Prime Minister said, "I'm currently studying the legislation around demonstrations and our broader legal framework."
On that, and underlying this is the question of tackling extremism, because there's the individual acts, but there's the tackling extremism as well, and the social cohesion that is necessary. And we want to work with you on that to really step up the work the government is doing, and to make sure that every single member of our Jewish community in this country feels safe, secure, and that this is where their home is. This is the country they are part of, and it's our job to make sure that that is absolutely reflected in a deep sense of security in this country. And
a huge debt, but it is an indictment of all of us in our country that in fact Jewish life can only be maintained in this country behind walls, behind thick glass, behind locks, and that children have to learn what a lockdown looks like. That's an indictment of all of us. And so whilst
the message is clear. Funding is necessary, but not sufficient. Behind the words lies a more complex dilemma: how to balance freedom of speech and the right to protest with the need to protect communities from intimidation and hate. In recent months, Britain has seen heated demonstrations, some peaceful, others marred by anti-Semitic slogans and online abuse. The government now faces pressure to redefine the limits of public protest, especially around faith institutions. Mahmood's review of demonstration laws signals that the issue is moving beyond rhetoric into policy. Then she turns to a more sensitive subject, one that has divided political circles for years. Her voice steadies as she declares, "Extremism is a serious and growing problem, and we must acknowledge and be honest about where these threats are coming from. That's why I said in the House of Commons that the attack that took place in Manchester was inspired by Islamist ideology. I am not afraid to denounce Islamism. It is necessary, but we must go beyond denunciation and also think about solutions." The room falls silent. Her statement is as bold as it is controversial. Few politicians in recent years have spoken so directly about the ideological roots of terrorism. Some will see her words as courage, others as confrontation. Yet her intent seems clear: to name the threat without vilifying the faith, to identify the problem without alienating the innocent. Mahmood's remarks resonate deeply because they touch on one of Britain's most delicate challenges: how to confront radicalisation without deepening divides. The country's Prevent strategy, designed to stop extremism, has long faced criticism for unfairly targeting Muslim communities. By naming Islamism while emphasising the search for solutions, Mahmood signals a shift toward nuance, not blame. As she speaks, the cameras pan across the CST's control centre, a wall of screens showing live footage from synagogues, schools and community halls across the UK. It's a glimpse into the quiet, constant vigilance that defines Jewish life today. In one corner, volunteers monitor online spaces, tracking hate speech before it spills into real-world threats. In another, staff coordinate with police to manage alerts. It's both impressive and sobering, a reminder that security has become an everyday act of faith. For the Jewish community, this visit matters, not just for the new funding, but for the recognition it brings. For decades, Jewish leaders have called for more visible government support, not only in words, but in presence. Today, they have both. But the wider backdrop cannot be ignored. Across Europe, anti-Semitic attacks have surged in Paris, Berlin, Copenhagen, and now Manchester. Governments are tightening laws, schools are reinforcing gates, and community centres are adapting to a reality where vigilance never sleeps. Britain, long seen as a safe haven for its Jewish citizens, is now confronting that same unease. In his remarks, Starmer insists that countering extremism must begin with social cohesion. To him, it's not only about police patrols, but about belonging, about ensuring that every citizen, regardless of faith, sees Britain as their home. This, he says, is the country they are part of, and it's our duty to make sure that translates into a deep sense of security.
So what we will do practical things on police presence outside synagogues and other places of interest for the Jewish community. We've announced the extra funding today, but I know that there is a bigger question here for all of us to think about and try and find an answer to together. As the Prime Minister said, I'm looking at protest legislation and I'm looking at our wider legal framework as well. We've in this space. Extremism is a big and growing problem, and we have to acknowledge and be honest about where those threats are coming from, and it's why I was very clear in the House on Monday that this attack that took place in Manchester was inspired by Islamist ideology. I am not scared of calling out Islamism. It isn't necessary, but we have to go beyond calling out and we have to think of solutions as well.
His choice of words, deep sense of security, is deliberate. It's not just about physical safety, but emotional assurance. For any community that has known persecution, security means being seen, protected, and understood. Outside, the CST's volunteers stand watch as police cars patrol the nearby streets. Their presence is quiet but constant, a symbol of protection that has sadly become routine. For some residents, the sight is comforting. For others, it's a reminder that fear still lingers. Experts say that Britain's challenge now lies in prevention, not just stopping attacks, but stopping the ideas that fuel them. Education, digital literacy, interfaith dialogue, these are the tools being discussed behind closed doors. But implementation will take time, money, and political will. At its heart, today's event is not only about anti-Semitism, it's about the soul of a nation that prides itself on tolerance. When one community feels unsafe, the entire social fabric is tested. Mahmood called it an indictment against all of us. And in truth, it is. The Prime Minister's visit marks an attempt to repair that fabric. Standing beside Britain's Muslim Home Secretary in front of the leaders of the Jewish Security Trust, Starmer projects an image of inclusion, two different faiths, one government, united by the same purpose, to make every citizen feel at home. But unity in words must be followed by unity in action. Civil rights advocates have already raised concerns about how new demonstration laws might affect free expression. Jewish groups, meanwhile, urge faster implementation of promised protections. The government walks a fine line, ensuring safety without eroding liberty. Historically, Britain's Jewish community has weathered many storms. From the expulsion of 1290 to their readmission under Cromwell centuries later, from the fascist rallies of the 1930s to today's online hate campaigns, their endurance is woven into the national story. The CST itself was born from that legacy, built not on fear, but on resilience. Security experts who advise the CST say that anti-Semitism rarely exists in isolation. It's a warning signal for society at large. When hate toward one group is tolerated, it soon spreads. That, perhaps, is why today's pledges matter beyond the Jewish community. They are about the kind of Britain people want to live in, confident, diverse, and safe. As the event draws to a close, Starmer meets young volunteers, many of them Jewish students who spend weekends monitoring online hate networks. They tell him that misinformation travels faster than ever. Posts that begin as jokes evolve into threats. He listens carefully and repeats a line he's used before. We must not only denounce extremism, but replace it with connection. The phrase captures the spirit of the day, not confrontation, but community. Because safety, in the end, isn't just built by fences and police. It's built by people who look out for one another, who refuse to see difference as danger. Outside, the Prime Minister and Home Secretary walk together toward the waiting convoy. The cameras follow them, two figures framed by flashing lights and autumn rain. For Britain's Jewish citizens, their promises bring cautious hope. For the country at large, they bring a challenge to turn empathy into endurance and words into will. As dusk settles over London, the city hums with its usual rhythm, traffic, chatter, the glow of evening lights. But beneath that normalcy lies an awareness that has grown sharper with each tragedy, that security is not guaranteed, that coexistence requires constant effort. In the days ahead, Starmer's government will be judged not by the solemnity of its speeches, but by the tangibility of its actions, by patrols on the streets, by the confidence of children walking to synagogue, by the quiet courage of a community refusing to retreat. For now, the Prime Minister's visit stands as a gesture, a promise that Britain will not look away. But gestures alone cannot undo fear. As one CST volunteer puts it quietly, safety isn't about who guards the door. It's about knowing the door will always stay open. And that is the task before this government, to ensure that open doors and open hearts become Britain's real defence. Because feeling safe, truly safe, should never be a privilege. It should be a right shared by all.